Good evening. My name is Jules Maarten. I'm the regional director here of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation in Brussels, and a very welcome to our premises for what promises to be a very exciting evening. I think it's under the heading "Liberals Leading the Way to Ukrainian Integration." I think we will find that actually the topic is even broader than that. But of course, it's a crucial aspect, and I think one of the great the greater political decisions that have been taken this year is that actually the European Union has decided to open the door to the Ukraine. But that, of course, also opens a lot of other questions, not necessarily all regarding the Ukraine, but regarding the European Union, how we organize ourselves, and what do we do with other countries who wish to come in, some of whom have been in the waiting room for quite a long while. So enough to think about. The European Commission, as one would expect, has been thinking about this and has just now published, I think, a very important document on this issue, and a lot of thought has gone into that. And this is what we will start the evening with. In your program, it says that Michal Konečnik will be here this evening. He's not here. But that is unfortunate, but it's also our luck, because it means that instead in DG NEAR we have Thomas Haagleitner, who has been heavily involved in all these discussions, knows all the ins and outs, and I'm sure will give us a very, very interesting introduction to this topic. So again, welcome this evening to the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, and I wish you a wonderful, interesting evening here with us. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me here. Thomas Haagleitner, I'm indeed in DG NEAR. It's difficult to replace Michal Konečnik, but he's the secretary after all, and we're doing enlargement in DG NEAR. So, now, and I'm doing, on the one hand, the Western Balkans, but I'm also doing the overall coordination of the EU's enlargement policy and the coordination of the enlargement package. It was not just one report or one document. There was 10 reports this year, an overall communication and the growth plan for the Western Balkans. But let me just briefly say a few preliminary remarks probably on enlargement before saying a few words on what we did and what we've recommended. The first preliminary remark is this year is an interesting anniversary of enlargement. If you look at it, we have 50 years of the very first enlargement of the European Union. Even if not all of them are still members. I'm saying that though because still some of the principles that have been agreed in '73 we're still applying today. One example, that the acquis as such is not up for negotiation, is not negotiable, only transitional periods limited in time and scope, is still part of the enlargement methodology we are following right now. We're also celebrating 30 years of the Copenhagen membership criteria, 93, and again they're still the key factor for our recommendations. For example, the approach since 93 that the Copenhagen political criteria, so the stability of institutions guaranteeing democracy, fundamental rights, rule of law, etc., is still our approach right now. So in the case of the recommendations, I'll say a bit more in a moment on Ukraine and Moldova, for example, we have concluded that the political criteria have been sufficiently fulfilled for this recommendation to go forward. It's also 20 years of the Thessaloniki Agenda, which gave the Western Balkans the perspective of EU membership. So a whole generation in the Western Balkans has grown up with this perspective, which explains a little bit a different mood in the Western Balkans and in Ukraine, Moldova, and to a certain degree in Georgia, I would say. and we can discuss this probably in more details. Why this has taken so long. There are many good reasons, there are some bad reasons why it has taken so long, but in any case also important to bear in mind. And finally, it makes 10 years since the last country joined the European Union from the Western Balkans, that's Croatia. Now, that's the first preliminary remark I wanted. The second one is that these days, when discussing about enlargement, and also when we have discussions with member states, there is sometimes this split between a geopolitical approach to enlargement and an own merits-based approach to enlargement. And I think that's an unhelpful distinction. There's no doubt that there is a geopolitical reality out there. It's key, that's clear. There is no doubt that the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine has brought enlargement up to the EU's top priorities again. I mean, I'm doing enlargement for a living since about 20 years, but I can tell you it makes a difference whether it's on my agenda or whether it's on the agenda of the European Council, and it is, and it will be, and they'll spend a lot of hours. I can safely predict that in next week discussing an enlargement. So there is no doubt that there is a geopolitical reality out there. At the same time, enlargement has to be based on own merits, and our recommendations are very much based on own merits, and I'll come back to that again in a moment. For two reasons, enlargement has to remain based on own merits. First, because it's the credibility of the policy that's at stake. There's no way to do it differently. And secondly, the whole success of enlargement, of preparing a country, hinges on that. Because if you, it's neither in the interest of the Union nor in the interest of a new member state to enter badly prepared. And if you strip off enlargement of all the politics of it, you know, the basics is that the technicality of it is to bring 150,000 pages of acquis onto the statute book of a new member state. And that's not only about the legislation, it's about the institutions, it's about the implementation, it's about the track record and rule of law, etc. So that is key, but again, it is preparation is key also in the economic field. No country is helped to join the single market without being properly prepared. You know, because then the opportunities will not materialize in the same way. And this is, by the way, one of the issues that we've picked up this year. Particularly, we're focused on socio-economic convergence on the Western Balkans largely, but not only. Because if we're looking at it, most of the enlargement countries are currently at around between 30 and maximum 50% of the EU's GDP per capita, if you take the EU 27, which is of course a problem mainly for the enlargement countries in a sense, but it would also be a problem for the EU in the longer term if you have countries joining at that level of GDP. On the other hand, there's obviously as well a lot of opportunities, because trying to close this gap is also an important opportunity. Now, what then did we recommend this year in this year's enlargement package? And I'll say a few words on that, and then also on the next steps. It was a historic package, not only in size and volume, because we've had 10 countries. Let's just recall that the enlargement family these days are the 6 Western Balkans, then Turkey, not to be forgotten, Turkey, as they're called these days, plus Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Now, if I do it in the order of how they stand in the process, just to recall, we have Montenegro in accession negotiations since 2012. Then we have, Turkey since 2005, if we start on that. But Turkey is probably a bit of a different case, we can go into more details. But there it is a European Council decision where they basically have suspended the accession negotiation, but it remains an important partner and a candidate country, and the Commission has recently also brought an additional report in a more forward-looking way on engagement with Turkey. Yeah? So Turkey, Montenegro, Serbia were also in accession negotiations since a few years. Then we have Albania and North Macedonia, where we opened accession negotiations last year, and where we've been doing this so-called screening process since then. Then we have Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'll come to the recommendation in a moment, and Kosovo, which has applied last year. Now, as you know, you apply to the Council, not to the Commission. In the case of Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia, the Council sent us the membership application within a week last year. In the case of Kosovo, it has not sent us the membership application yet. And again, if you want, we can discuss this in more detail afterwards. In terms of recommendations, so we, and I'm not going through all the countries, but we've made 4 key recommendations. We have we have recommended to open accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. And as we're often getting this question, I should clarify that this is an unconditional recommendation. So we have recommended the opening full stop. Because of the work that's been done in both countries in addressing the 7 or 9 steps that were identified in last year's Commission opinion, which are precisely meant to address the Copenhagen political criteria that I have mentioned before. I think it was remarkable, also in the case of Ukraine, the commitment. I think if someone woke up President Zelensky in the middle of the night with all his problems he has, he could probably quote by heart the 7 steps and where Ukraine is in this regard, and where they might not fully agree with us here or there. I'm not sure that every other leader in the Western Balkans, for example, I'm not quoting any names, if you wake them up in the middle of the night, they could give you the list of next steps they're supposed to fulfill. That's another story. In the case of Ukraine and Moldova, we've made an unconditional recommendation, but we have constructed it in 2 steps as the next step after the opening of accession negotiations, which has to be decided by member states by unanimity, is the preparation of a so-called negotiating framework, which sets out the way we are handling the accession negotiations, the main decision-making, the main principles, as I said before, the key is not up for negotiations, nothing's agreed until everything's agreed, etc. This type of the way we are benchmarking during the negotiations, all that is in the negotiating framework. And we've therefore recommended that the Council adopts this negotiating framework once the outstanding issues have been addressed. And as our overall assessment is that this is a fairly small part of the 7 or 9 steps for both countries. We think that this can be done in the coming months, and that's why we have also volunteered to report to the Council by March. In the case of Georgia, we have made the recommendation. There is a bit of a different level and stage. We have recommended to grant candidate status to the to member states. On the understanding that the outstanding issues are being addressed. So that is exactly the same formulation, the same wording we have used last year for Ukraine and Moldova. Now, Bosnia and Herzegovina, finally. If you ask me today, my prediction would still be that Bosnia and Herzegovina will take a bit more time at the European Council than Ukraine. Also, the gap is narrowing, I must say. Last year Ukraine took 15 minutes and the European Council, Bosnia and Herzegovina took 3 hours. As Bosnia and Herzegovina is a more divisive issue these days. Now, in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, We have made an opinion back in 2019. We've identified 14 key priorities that need to be fulfilled, precisely for the political criteria to be fulfilled. We have last year recommended candidate status, and it was granted by the European Council. Since then, we have seen some steps by Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in order to encourage this further, the Commission has made a conditional, in this case, conditional recommendation to open accession negotiations once the country reaches the necessary degree of compliance with the membership criteria. So this has been our recommendation. And when you ask what are the issues, then they are largely again the 14 key priorities that have been identified in the Commission opinion. Now, these have been our recommendations. Now, enlargement would be much easier to handle if it were the Commission deciding. Now, enlargement, always bear in mind, it's not only for enlargement happening. Enlargement, remember, Commission recommends, the Council decides, and the Council decides by unanimity. So this is the pattern we have, this is the decision making we have. So therefore our recommendations are currently discussed by the Council. They are preparing two sets of documents. On the one hand, for the General Affairs Council in December, an overall set of Council conclusions, as they usually do, because this is what the Council, how the Council responds to the Commission's enlargement package, where they go through all the countries with the key messages from their side. So this is one set that's currently being discussed in the Council. And then there are also European Council conclusions, and the decisions on the 4 decisions I mentioned before will have to go to the European Council at the end of next week. Now, the two main issues are the European Council next week are enlargement on the one hand, but also the MFF review and the review of the multi-annual financial framework, which is, enlargement is never easy, but the MFF review is even less easier, to put it that way. And we are in it as well, because the whole reason why we had to reopen the MFF, of course, is Ukraine, and we had to, and we're part of the bulk of it is the proposal for an Ukraine a facility, and with 50 billion for the next years. We've also proposed a smaller facility, by the way, for the Western Balkans, which is constructed on the same model as Ukraine, but for 6 billion euro. Now, that's why I'm saying enlargement and the MFF, the money discussions are linked in the level of the European Council, which makes any predictions even more difficult than usual. I would, however, I'm still optimistic. I think the leaders of the European Council will not only recognize the geopolitical situation I mentioned before, but also recognize that the recommendations we have made are grounded into substantial work that has been done by the countries concerned, and this is why we are going into all of these details, and why these reports have 150 pages in going through all details on rule of law and the fundamentals, as we call them. So I think this is and should be a good basis for decision making, and I hope that the European Council will indeed come to conclusions then next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear distinguished colleagues, guests, and participants, it's my great pleasure to speak to my fellow liberals. Thank you for having this crucial and timely discussion on Ukraine's EU integration process, some days before European Council meeting of the leaders. This is the meeting which promises to be a historic one, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole Europe. 10 years ago, Ukrainians all over the country went to the streets to protest against the decision to delay or cancel signature of the association agreement with the EU. Everybody saw it as the turnover of the European course of Ukraine. Major throughout was that we would not let it take away from us, take away our future. Everyone understood what was at stake. All these years, since the Revolution of Dignity, despite the war, Ukrainian government and society have been modernizing and transforming the country, gradually aligning it with the Copenhagen criteria. As an EU candidate country, we do maintain exceptionally high dynamics of the European integration and the implementation of the relevant structural reforms in fundamental areas. These are in the judicial sector, fight against corruption, money laundering, transparency of data, implementing anti-oligarch measures, and strengthening antitrust. We have established a media market which now complies fully with European regulations. Particular attention in our dialogue was related to the human rights and the protection of the rights of the national minorities, with a special focus to EU-related areas. Over the last year, Ukraine has not only demonstrated impressive resilience, but also a capacity to prepare the country for EU membership. The European Commission's assessment of the progress in implementing these 7 recommendations within the framework of the enlargement package is a clear and objective recognition of Ukraine's commitment. For us also, it's very important to understand that Ukraine has become the real golden standard of the merit-based approach. Ukraine has fully delivered on its commitment. And regardless the very fact that the Commission has put on additional 4 technical measures for it to be able to enforce the negotiations if the leaders will agree on it on 15th of December. We are now waiting until the next year. The Parliament is already putting into its agenda all the package of remaining anti-corruption measures. We have reached a consensus on a comprehensive structural and sectoral amendments enabling enforcement of all the rights of the national minorities and putting them finally into real practice. We are also working hard on putting additional amendments to the legislation in areas related to de-oligarchization. Thus, it's absolutely clear that we have created a solid ground for a positive decision of EU member states. It's a crucial decision for our future, for our morale. It's the demand of Ukrainian society, but it's crucial for the European project as such. The decisions will identify the role of European Union in the European project. By opening doors to new members, the European Union will reinforce its role as the global force and contribute to the overall security and stability in Europe. It is a crucial basis for strengthening our efforts in addressing collectively regional security given the challenges we face. Promoting stability and peace in Europe is possible only with the day-to-day measures taken with that aid. So any kind of discussion on veto or delayed decisions will only be an answer that it's veto for the development, veto for a stronger Europe. And we clearly understand that we're only at the beginning of the path. And the decisions expected on 15th of December, from one point, they are really technical. But on the other point, they're existential for the future. Today, European integration provides the only one positive agenda, an agenda of development, but not only survival. It's vital for us, it's vital for every Ukrainian. As I keep on answering the questions, what is happening in Ukraine? In Ukraine, we're still fighting the war, the full-scale war of aggression. We still face losses, we still face massive attacks against civilian population, and we still face a lot of war crimes, which is the daily suffering. At the same time, we managed to run the country, we managed to survive, At the same time, we managed to reinforce our efforts in terms of strengthening democracy and advancing in our European path. This is a principled position that Ukraine will keep on moving, no matter what. Ukraine will win. Europe will win. We should not count by days. We should count by goals. And I hope that the nearest one, which really now depends on all of you, will be taken. Thank you.
So here we go. Always difficult when does the mic work?
But it's blinking.
Okay, so that should be. Oh, here we go. Good evening, dear liberal friends, as Olga Stefanishina just said. I met her for the first time in January of 22, so before the war broke out, before Putin attacked in Kiev, and she was in Vienna a few times. She was there like 10 days ago, and we showed her the old Reichsratssaal, you know, the old plenary session of the parliament of the Habsburg Empire. We showed her the place where the people from Galicia, also Kira was there, were sitting, and we talked not only about history, a little bit about history, but about the future. And I'm always impressed when I talk to her and when I hear her. And there are just a few points I just were writing down, and I think we have to talk about those. It's so impressive to listen to her, and what she didn't say now, she said a few times to me as well. Zelensky calls her at least once a day, mostly in the morning, and says, so what else did we do in order to get into the European Union? So what you said about Zelensky, he knows the next steps, and he talks to his people every day. So, Kira Rudik, welcome here. You also been to Vienna. We've been to the Reichsratssaal. We meet at ALDE meetings. You know her, but if you don't know her, she's vice president of ALDE. She's member of the Verkhovna Rada, and she's a very important voice for the Ukrainians in these times. Welcome, Kira.
Thank you so much.
We talked about Serbia. Klemen Groschel from Slovenia, member of the European Parliament, knows just about everything what's happening in Serbia. Not in the last 2 days probably, but he will be there next time again. He was member of the European Parliament. He also was secretary in the Defense Ministry. Good evening. And Rosa Thun-Hohenstein. I'm always very impressed of people who were fighting authoritarian systems or dictatorships, like you did, like Kira is doing now. I always say we are the lucky generation, those who grew up in Western Europe. They gave us democracy and the rule of law and everything as a presence. You had to fight for it. So as I said, I'm always very much impressed. And which is also interesting about, there are many things that are interesting, but probably also for our discussion, she's also delegation of the relations with Israel. That probably might also be a point of our discussion tonight. I would like to start, and please give us a short overview, the three of you, what's happening in Ukraine right now. Kira, please tell us what's happening in Serbia right now. There will be elections on 17th of December. What does that mean? What will the elections mean for the enlargement process? And please, in Poland, sometimes it's not bad for a country which has no government, but I think it's important that you get a government as soon as possible. You have one, yeah, but you will have a new government. But please, you have two governments.
Government of 2 weeks.
A government of 2 weeks, okay. Please explain the situation, that we understand the situation in Poland right now. But let's start with Kira, please.
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure and privilege to see so many familiar faces and new faces, and Friedrich Naumann Foundation, and Helmut, thank you so much for having me, Felix of course. It's a true pleasure to be here, and before I answer your question, I really want to bring you to the context and give you some of the reality check. So I want to tell you how my next 2 days would look like and explain how this would all fit to it. Tomorrow morning I will be flying to Poland, where I will try to have some quick meetings with some of the colleagues regarding the unblocking of the borders, if it's possible, because there are right now Ukrainian trucks are not allowed out and in, and it's a super complicated situation. Then I will get in my car and I will drive for 10 hours through Lviv and then through some other places where I will stop briefly to talk to people, because what people desperately want and desperately need is to hear this information that we received so gracefully and in very detailed manner, like how it would affect their lives and what's going on and what would happen. And then on the next day, if everything's okay and we will survive all the air raid sirens, etc., we'll have parliamentary seating when we will vote for some of the particular things that Olga Stefanishina mentioned that would push us through. Today is the day of Ukrainian armed forces. It's a super important day for us. And it is important because when I will go back to Ukraine, I will be talking to military. And they are so hungry for news. And they are asking you direct questions. And these questions are the following. So how it is outside? Do they remember about us? What are they saying about us? Is the help going on the way? And then what's the story with the accession process of the enlargement? Are we in the EU yet? And I will have to explain whatever I hear here and feel here to people who are fighting and risking their lives. So I will be extremely positive. This is the first one. The second point is for Ukrainians understanding like where we are right now. We are in an incredibly tough spot. We are facing the second winter of the full-scale invasion, where we don't have this, like the first energy that we had, and we have still so many missiles that Russia have saved and not used during the last couple of months, so they are attacking our energy infrastructure right now. So my last winter was basically going in and out my home, pouring diesel into generator just to get electricity. And if you think sitting in a bomb shelter is a unpleasant situation, I can tell you when you have lights, internet, and it's warm, it's one thing. When it's dark, cold, and no internet, and you are with kids, it's a completely different situation. Sitting for hours and waiting there. So, third thing is, we still didn't receive the confirmation from the United States on this military package. So it's like lots of worrying, and believe it or not, today so many TV channels reached out saying, so what do you think? Well, we think it's very bad that we did not have a decision just yet. And if it's all not to show you the borscht of the situation, just 2 days ago, Putin announced that for the next year, he confirmed the additional conscription of 170,000 soldiers and more than $100 billion just specifically for the war in Ukraine, for the special military operation. He announced that it's written, you can read it, it's not something that he made in his speech. So it's obviously on us to match up the amount of people to fight at the front. But where would we get $100 billion? And how would we manage to get them? And so this is on our allies. And what we are doing right now, we are just trying to keep up on the previously made political promises so that we can have them written down and then have them executed on, right? So here is where we are. So one of the important and super critical things that Olga Stefanishina said, and I want to add to it, we are desperately needing good news. And this is why I do hope that there would be good news. Then, one short story, Hamilton, I'm sorry, but it's a good one. So, last year, no, it's a good feeling, and I'm super happy to share those memories with you. So, last year, it was also very symbolic for us, a matter of European Union accession. So, last year, it was literally first good news that happened since full-scale invasion. It's potential decision on the candidacy. And I remember how it was not decided 100% till the end of the decision. And I remember how we were thinking, when the world collapses around you, again, you need good news. And so, except for what Helmut said, I'm also a leader of a liberal party, Holos. First liberal party to ever enter Ukrainian parliament. We entered it in 2019. We were young and naive. And in our party program, we had ratifying Istanbul Convention. So I can tell you that in 2019, we couldn't even go ahead with it at all. And so one of the things, I remember how we were sitting in the room trying to persuade, I think, Netherlands that we are worthy of the candidacy status. And then somebody says, well, maybe we should try and ratify Istanbul Convention to show them that we are true Europeans. And so people say, well, no, maybe possible. And I remember how we got in the room, and same people who told me, absolutely not in 2019, absolutely same parliamentarians, got into the same parliament room and voted with almost constitutional majority. So proud. And so here we are, last year, having it waving in our flag, saying, okay, look, we are liberals, we are Europeans, get us in, and we are getting candidacy status. Wow, yay. And I was, by the way, this day, I was here in Brussels. And so, if you hear a story about a crazy woman who was running around the European Parliament screaming, yay, Ukraine, it may or may not be me, but it was just an amazing feeling. Now, the risk of that. We were so happy about it that if right now you ask my father, whom I hope to visit on the way, where we are with the European integration, same as if you ask, maybe different answer if you ask President Zelensky. But so my father and so many other Ukrainians would say, we are somewhere there, the paperwork is just lost in the mail. Because the expectations are very high, and because we are pushing so hard, really from the parliamentary side and from all the sides, that we need to be there, that we almost there. So, finishing up where we are right now. Then we've got our seven recommendations, and Ukrainian parliament is working even under the bombarding, and we have voted for all the things that we could have voted by this time, as Olga again said. So when we had next EU-Ukraine summit, it was the first time in our long parliamentary life when we came in, those school kids whose family homework is absolutely done. No dog has eaten it. It did not burn. It did not get stolen or something. We had everything that we could have done. And we were so happy about ourselves, and we were finally to show for it, saying look, we really want to be there, and everybody agrees to that. I do not think right now that too many of Ukrainian politicians understand that after all the positive decisions that we are waiting for, there is a whole bunch of process that is 7,000 steps, and not 7. But it's, as one of my colleagues said, I want to have this problem. So, sorry for taking it so long. We really, really need it to be good news, just so that we can tell it to our military people. This is every single time what I'm keeping in mind. And then I think where there's a political situation where we still have a capacity to go and do whatever it takes to implement the necessary reforms. Because I think where we are right now, we are at this window of opportunity that we have the leadership, we have the necessity, and we have the demand of Ukrainian people that we can do things that are necessary for my country. And I hate to say it, but I will still say it, not even if it was not for integrating into European Union, it's all good things that Ukraine needs and Ukrainian people need: the rule of law, anti-corruption, etc., etc. So I don't know what else we can do as of this moment to persuade what to do. We will be probably voting the first reading of the national minorities bill this week, again to show that our commitment is at the edge of a knife, and we are so concentrated on getting our country. Because if you look at it from just personal perspective, it's no fun to live at the historic times, as Helmut said, where we have to fight against authoritarian regime. But what we can do actually is to push up a country where it was never before, and use all our strengths and everything that is in our small hands to push it where it needs to be, where it is written in our constitution, in NATO and EU.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kira. And this speech just proved the incredible spirit I also see when I visit your country, or when people from Ukraine come to Vienna. There was a delegation from the Ukrainian parliament in Vienna the last few days, and they wanted to see how we do guided tours, how we work with school classes, etc. And it's very difficult in a war situation, but they're already preparing for the time afterwards, and that's what I really admire. What you know, there's so many details where you see that you really are working for this new kind of democracy in this country, which you will have after the war. But I want to continue with Rosa, because the conflict already was mentioned, the conflict with Poland. We know we can't discuss now the complicated history between Poland and Ukraine, but we know that from the very beginning the Poles were completely on the side for Ukraine. Now it changed a little bit. Can you please explain both subjects? First of all, what's happening now, what will happen as far as the confrontation with Ukraine is concerned on the border, but secondly also, what will the new government decide? Thank you.
How should I know?
Because you know so much.
We know you know.
We know you know.
So, good evening. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, intervention, speech, whatever. It's fantastic to listen. I find it so encouraging, honestly, when I listen to you or your colleagues, in the situation in which you are. And I always feel so indebted. We have a very long border with Ukraine, and we have this war there. You keep this Putin away from us, and at the same time you reform the country partially. I don't know if you realize, but they reconstruct already now those destroyed cities under the bombardments again. You prepare for the membership in the European Union, this diligence, organization, and this optimism, and this is, I must admit, I'm incredibly impressed. And not only by those politicians who come to Brussels, whom I often hear because they come to visit the Europe, but also by those many Ukrainians who are in Poland. Or in my house now there is only one lady, but there were 11 of them at the moment. And this perfect, I don't know, this is just unbelievable. Their husbands struggle and they arrange their life somehow in exile with their kids, try to help back home, some go back home. And I think sometimes that we need you more than you need us, honestly, that we just need this Ukrainian in the European Union with your spirit, capacities, organization, this devotion to the issue, courage and everything. Well, I should finish, but this is exemplary. And now I think the attitude of Poland to Ukraine is not less enthusiastic, I think, than it was. But, as you know, we have still this horrible government that lost the elections recently. I don't know if you followed the situation. We had elections on the 15th of October. The government of Kaczynski, let's say, lost the elections, but they lost the elections. That means they were the first to come, but they are unable to create a coalition. So there is already a coalition that has a very clear majority, but the president gave the Aufgabe, the task, the mandate to create the government to the ex-Prime Minister Morawiecki, so to say, who cannot have a majority anyhow. This is hopeless. But they want to gain time, destroy documents, give each other positions, distribute money to their foundations and media that they own, etc., etc. So this month will cost us a lot. And there is a government, as we call it, transitory government or government for 2 weeks, because the president nominated this, Morawiecki nominated him as prime minister. He has his ministers for 2 weeks, still a week to go. So we hope, and there is this huge problem at the border, which is blocked, and the people are in the trucks, have been there for, I don't know, already at least 2 weeks, no? More than 2 weeks. 2 Ukrainian drivers died already. It's minus 15 degrees. And there is this huge problem, really, where we called the Association of Drivers to withdraw. Now Ukrainians also started blocking roads. And this is really escalating, and this government doesn't do anything. And I don't know if it's evil will or just incompetence, because this is unfortunately a mixture of both. They're completely incompetent, those people. And of course there is the problem started, I don't know if you followed, with the fact that the Ukrainian grains that was to be exported to, I don't know, Northern Africa, instead of going through Poland, came to Poland, which created huge problems to the farmers, because suddenly there was an incredible amount of grains on the Polish market, but the government never organized anything in order to be a transfer country and not a destination. So we became suddenly a destination instead of helping Ukrainians to export those grains, and they have to export it to further countries. Then there is this issue with transport companies. I tend to say to Polish drivers, we did sort of the same thing a few years ago to Western Europe. We started transporting goods on trucks much cheaper than the Westerners. But the Polish companies blocked the border. So there is this kind of escalation, but I wouldn't say that the atmosphere among the Poles towards Ukrainians has changed. And I'm completely confident that this new government that must be sworn in according to the constitution latest on the 13th of December will immediately start solving all those problems. This is one issue. Then we have the council on the 15th. We still are not sure if the president will take the oath of the new prime minister, so that Tusk can come and not Morawiecki to the next council. And the next council, and this is pretty crucial, really. He must go, I'm sorry to be so nasty, the president must go, he says, to Switzerland on the 11th and 12th, and you know, every day counts, because for the next council we would like it to be Prime Minister Tusk, who has the majority in the parliament, and is a Democrat and, you know, experienced person, as you know. And every day count. And just to give you the illustration of this, of peace, of law and justice, of this government, previous government, and Duda, that's his political family, the president's political family is this government. He must go to Switzerland on the 11th and the 12th to some meeting of I don't know, school directors or something extremely important of that kind. I'm sorry, I'm nasty. But he has to take the oath from the new government. The latest date is the 13th, so of course I hope he will not have problems with blood pressure or something and will have to stay longer. I can only hope. He promised he will come on time and take and swear in, is that in English correctly, the new government. Then on the 15th, when we have this council, Tusk will be able to come, which I hope very much. And, you know, when we talk about arming this horrible war that is going on, Putin, who is organizing people and spending billions, we are blocked, as you discreetly mentioned, diplomatically, but we have Orban, who vetoes this 50 billion for Ukraine, but also he vetoes, correct me if I'm wrong, those this part of the budget that should pay in the member states this debt. I mean, the costs that were spent on arming. Yeah, peace facility. Voila, this peace facility is also blocked, isn't it? Yes. So that, you know.
The other one is actually not yet blocked because
it will be way
but he already announced that he will block
He's writing
it.
letter.
Yeah, and this is, something incredible. And so my first, we have an open procedure, as far as I remember, on Article 7. That means depriving the government from the voting possibility in the council, which I think, if we change the prime minister, if we change the government in Poland, there will be no Kaczyński to protect Orban, and I hope that would pass. But there are others. I hope you'll work on them.
Okay, thank you. One sentence.
Especially Austrians. And I'm finishing. And the second thing, I was really terrified in the European Parliament when we were voting this proposal for changing the treaties and getting rid of unanimity. And Orban is a perfect example of what happens when we have unanimity. That it went through, we voted it only with 17 votes. That means 9 in plus, really. And this is terrifying. And I really think that we need more debates of this kind, also with members and parties, etc., so that they realize that we cannot function like this and we cannot enlarge with this treaty. And if we all say we need Ukraine, we want to enlarge, etc., we must have guts and change a few things. Sorry, I'm so long.
One sentence. Well.
I'm really sorry. 2 sentences, yes. So, first, when people are asking us what is the story with Polish elections, we answer, we barely survived them. Because there were so many debates where Ukraine was a part of those debates, and the results that, how it influenced us are really terrifying. And this is why when I'm looking to the next year, where half of the world will go into elections in the United States, in European countries, I'm honestly terrified because first, it will be a distraction from what is going on in Ukraine from the war, but also there will be so many populist voices that you will hear that would say we should be thinking about ourselves and not somebody else fighting. We should not be spending money, etc. And my separate speech, I will talk to you about how to answer that. But there is one more thing that I promised to my mom, and this is why I have to do it. So, on that day 1 of the full-scale invasion, Poles and Poland did something amazing when they opened the border alongside with all our neighbors, but I don't think that we can ever calculate or count what has been done from the side of the Poland. And what you have done for us, and for our men and women, and for children, is truly generational, opening your homes for people who have none, creating shelters for people who have none and who are running in a scare and despair. And once, 3 months into the full-scale invasion, I made a trip myself on the, we call it refugee trip, when you go on the train and then arrive into Helm, and then people meet you at the station and give you warm cup of tea. And there was some grandmother that pushed me to eat a pie that I didn't want to and gave me a warm sweater, so I really didn't look good, I think. And then I called my mom, and she made me to make a vow that every single time I will meet a representative of Poland, I will always be thankful and give a huge hug. So this is what I'm going to do right now.
These are the symbols we need in Europe. I think that's really important. Thank you very much. Kim, now it's your turn, please. First of all, please explain from your experience, from your view as Slovenia, but also a member of the European Parliament, what will happen in December, what will happen with Orban, what do the Slovenes think about Ukraine, membership of Ukraine, but also as a rapporteur for Serbia. Do they really want to enlarge the European Union with Serbia? What do they want, and what can we do to show the Serbian people that it does make sense to be a good member of the European Union and not like the playground for Mr. Vučić?
Good evening.
I need to do this as disclaimer because, you know, it's the issue is that I'm now the chair of the election observation mission to Serbia because they have snap elections on the 17th of December, so I'm limited in judging what's going on in Serbia, so I will use the Western Balkans.
Okay.
So if this might sound like Serbia, then it's just coincidental. So look, I will start from where Roja stopped. So Orban, if you want to have the impression how the situation in the Western Balkans is the 6 billions which are intended for the Western Balkans, and Orban doesn't have a problem with that. This tells a lot. I mean, it tells actually everything in regard to the Western Balkans. The Western Balkans are now, I would say, not in this, in that much, I would say, important crossroad, but still they are, in a sense, because what we have in the Western Balkans is that they are in some way, they are tired of enlargement. They are losing this steam, this enthusiasm for the enlargement, and this is, I would say, an important lessons learned. Please don't take this personal, but even the Western Balkans are post-conflict societies, and I think that what it was said to before, so that this is that enlargement, accession is actually geopolitical, and it's now also merit-based approach. In the Balkans, it should be a little bit different. Why? Because you can say that it could be merit-based, you see it doesn't work. Let's be frank, it doesn't work. Merit-based approach in the Balkans, it doesn't work. Why? Because simply these societies are so deeply, I would say, soaked with the power structures of the past, that they simply cannot move forward without the help of the European Union. This is the fact. The next fact is that people in the Western Balkans are leaving Western Balkans en masse. You know, Bosnia and Herzegovina, officially 3.4 million people, actually 2.5 or even less. You know, this is the reality. And who went out of the countries? Those who are the most pro-European, those who are the smartest, the brightest, the best. And they are now here in the European Union. Who left are the older people, those who are satisfied, and those who can be manipulated by the power structures which actually start to emerge, and this is very important to stress, during the war. So these people are still in control, even though the faces change. It could be this president, other president, you can look in every single country in the region. And what is important, it was mentioned Montenegro. Montenegro was the champion. But everyone who was dealing with the Balkans knew they will fail. We knew it. If you ask our average Slovenian, they would say they will fail. And they did. And it's very difficult to go further. Why? Because at a certain point, when accession starts, when there are reforms, people who are in power, officially, and most important, those who are behind, figure out that they will lose power, they will lose economic power, the corruption will stop. You know, this also structure which was running the country collapses when you enter the European Union. And the pressure and the power of this structure is so huge that you need to deal with them. And this is why I'm saying, and I had this discussion with the Commission. I will not mention the Commissioner because he's my dear friend, of course. We are very close, of course. We could be a pen pals for the letters I am sending to him, and getting no reply, of course. So now I started with amendments with the reports, you know. With this, should Commission check a little bit what he's doing in the Balkans. But, and I will say why it is important with these amendments. What I was trying to say is that why they failed. Because, you know, the Western Balkans now were the place of our intervention. And this is our responsibility. Because we intervened there. You know, Bosnia, you said Bosnia is a problem. Remember Dayton Agreement 1995? Who was there? Who was co-signed the agreement? So when you're talking to the Bosnians, you're saying, yeah, but you know, you have such a complicated constitutional system. Yeah, but look, for them, it's you, us, who did it. They didn't do it. We did it. We did